All right, let's talk about one of the most brilliant and, frankly, terrifying military moves in all of history. We're going all the way back to 217 BC to break down a battle that was pretty much over before the Romans even knew it had started.
I mean, this is how it ends, with the Roman commander, Gaius Flaminius, completely blindsided and killed. His entire army was just gone. Not defeated on some glorious battlefield, but trapped and systematically slaughtered in what might just be the most perfect ambush ever. And look, that's not just me saying it. The legendary military historian Basil Littlehart called it exactly that, the greatest ambush in history. So the question is, how on earth did one man with one incredible, terrifying idea manage to just erase a Roman army from existence? To really get how Hannibal set this perfect trap, you first have to understand the bigger picture, the massive war that brought him into the heart of Italy in the first place. So, in the late 3rd century BC, the Mediterranean was basically a tinderbox waiting for a spark. You had the unstoppable rise of the Roman Republic on one side, and on the other, the great seafaring empire of Carthage. And Carthage's secret weapon? A guy named Hannibal Barca, a true military genius who had a serious score to settle with Rome. Hannibal decided he wasn't going to play by Rome's rules. Instead of fighting at sea or way out in Spain, he did something nobody thought was possible. He took the war right to their doorstep, marching his army, war elephants and all, on this insane, brutal journey over the Alps and right down into Italy. Rome was absolutely floored. And he wasn't just there to make a statement. Nope. He almost immediately proved his skills by completely smashing a Roman army at the Battle of the Trebia. Just like that, in a few short months, Hannibal went from a distant threat to Rome's public enemy number one, a boogeyman that was now loose in their backyard. Okay, so Rome is on red alert. Everyone's panicking. And Hannibal's next move? Well, it wasn't just a military maneuver. It was pure psychological warfare. He marches his huge army, 50,000 men, into Etruria, which is basically modern-day Tuscany. But he wasn't just looking for food or a city to conquer. Oh no, he was laying a trap. He was putting out a very, very specific kind of bait. Hannibal just unleashed total terror. He burned everything he could find. Farms, villages, you name it. His soldiers were given orders to kill every single military-aged man they found. Now, this wasn't just mindless destruction. It was a calculated strategy designed for one purpose, to make the Roman army look weak and to absolutely enrage its commander. And this is where you see the huge difference between the two generals. On one hand, you have Hannibal, patient, clever, a master of mind games, just waiting for his moment. And his opponent, Gaius Flaminius, was the exact opposite. He was arrogant, impulsive, and now he was furious and deeply humiliated. He took the bait hook, line, and sinker and started chasing Hannibal in a blind rage, without even bothering to send scouts ahead. And that reckless, furious chase led Flaminius and his entire army right into the spider's web, exactly where Hannibal wanted him. So on June 20th, Hannibal's army gets to the north shore of Lake Trasimene, and he must have known it instantly. This was the spot. It was perfect. A narrow path with the deep lake on one side and a long ridge of hills on the other. It was a natural death trap. His plan was just pure genius deception. He set up a small, obvious camp at the end of the valley, making it look like that's where his army was resting. Then, under the cover of darkness, he marched the vast majority of his army on a silent, grueling trek up and over the hills where they could hide. Let's just break down how perfect this was. First, he hid his cavalry right by the entrance to the valley, ready to slam the door shut once the Romans were inside. Second, he spread out all his best infantry along the hills, looking straight down on the road. And then came the hardest part. An entire army of 50,000 men had to stay perfectly still and silent all night long, waiting for the sun to rise. The stage was set. The trap was laid. All Hannibal needed was for his hot-headed rival to just walk right in. And at dawn the next day, Flaminius did just that. He was so eager to catch the army he thought was just ahead that he marched his 25,000 legionaries in one long, thin column right into that narrow gap between the hills and the lake. They were completely, totally exposed. Their entire flank was open to attack from the hills above. So what could possibly make the situation even more of a death trap? A thick, heavy fog that rolled in from the lake. It was like a gift from the gods for Hannibal.
The Romans were basically marching blind. They couldn't see the hills just a few hundred feet away, where an entire army was watching their every move, just waiting. Once the last Roman soldier was inside the trap, the signal was given. Horns blasted from every direction. The Carthaginian cavalry charged, sealing off the escape route. And all along the ridge, tens of thousands of warriors came screaming down the slopes, crashing into the Roman line. It was pure, absolute chaos.
The result was a massacre. In just 3 hours. 3 hours. 15,000 Roman soldiers were killed, trapped in marching formation, with no room to fight back.
And the Carthaginian losses? Only about 1,500 men. It just shows you how efficient and brutal the whole thing was. This wasn't a battle, it was an execution. And news of an entire consular army being completely wiped out, well, that sent a shockwave of pure terror all the way back to the streets of Rome. The fallout was just catastrophic. It wasn't just Flaminius's 25,000 men who were gone. A few days later, Hannibal's forces found and destroyed a 4,000-man cavalry force that was on its way to help. The news threw Rome into a complete meltdown. They were so desperate they appointed a dictator, Fabius Maximus, who came up with a whole new strategy. Whatever you do, don't ever, ever fight Hannibal in a straight-up battle. But here's the crazy thing. As unbelievably devastating as Lake Trasimene was, it was actually part of a terrifying trend for Rome. You can see it here. The defeat at the Trebia was bad. Trasimene was a catastrophe. But believe it or not, Rome's absolute worst military disaster was still yet to come at a place called Cannae. So think about it. Hannibal proved he could outthink, outmaneuver, and utterly destroy any army Rome threw at him. He pulled off the single greatest ambush in history and brought the mighty republic to the brink of total collapse. Which leaves us with the biggest question of all. Why wasn't that enough to win the war?